Hello and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst. And we're here to analyse if Victor Gyokeres is as good as he seems. Right, welcome back. Obviously, we're here to talk about the man of the transfer window, which is Victor Gyokeres. And we've spent a lot of time, and I think everyone's been looming around Victor Gyokeres for months and months, and the question is he as good as he seems in the Portuguese League, and will he score enough goals for someone to pay £55 million, I think is the reported fee for him? And it's a very complicated answer. We're going to try our best today, but I'm just going to throw it onto you straight away just to give your top line on him as a player. And it's going to sound crazy, this video, because we are going to find weaknesses in a player who's scored almost as many goals as Manchester United in his league. So let's try and do our best here. So what do you make of him as an entire package?
Yeah, how many goals does he have in the league this
39
season? 39 goals, league goals this season.
And they've just won the league, by the way.
Yeah, so irrespective of where you play, it's a massively impressive stat. And the thing is, he's been brilliant for a few years as well. I remember when he was at Coventry, he was part of that fairly successful run that they had, and he was really impressive then. And there's two camps with this player, and I think I posted a tweet saying I think he's better than the general consensus. Someone replied to me and said, but the general consensus is that he's a world-class striker. And then
but I don't think it is.
The general consensus is completely two separate camps. One's this is a world-class player who's scoring about 40 goals in the league, and the other is, look, he's doing it in Portugal and his style isn't transferable at all. We'll certainly get into that. I think with most football players in the world, they are all good in the right circumstances, in the right environment, if platformed to maximise their strengths and minimise their weaknesses. That's kind of a spiel that I have, and it kind of sounds like nothing at the moment, but if you look at this side that he's playing for this season, it does maximise his strengths, it does minimise his weaknesses, and he can play maximally in terms of getting into his best zones. And we'll go into that later on into the video, but he's able to get shots away in areas where he's more likely to score them. He's not involved in too much defensive work, and when he is in favourable situations, such as defending his box from corners, they're not asking him to kind of wrestle 2 or 3 defenders in small spaces, that he's able to push the ball away and get shots off from distance numerous times a game, get into the box, into areas he's good in, get shots off numerous times a game, because he is their best player, and a lot of the game is focused around him. So for all of those reasons, he looks even better than he might somewhere else, but you don't score 40 goals without being somewhat of a quality player, and it's up to whether or not other teams can get that quality and utilise it to the best of his ability and profile. Yeah,
so if we're looking at this, will probably give us a good starting point to talk about one of the main grey areas and one of the main question marks over him. So in front of me here, I've got goal-ending carries plus assist-ending carries, where he has 14 combined this season. Second is Mohamed Salah, and as you can see further down the list, the players that come on from him. And he's basically a major standout in the names here, because most of them are tricky wingers, inside forwards, players you would class as dribblers. Now, you mentioned something, to explain how he can possibly be there, and that is that he actually works his best football with space in front of him, and when arriving into space and facing forward, more importantly, going into the space. And I want you to just run through quickly how that's the case, whether or not you think he would get that much space in another league. I'm trying my hardest not to disregard the Portuguese League, but would he get the space in the Premier League? And if he were to get the space in the league, who as a team would platform him as well to get that much space but still be in good enough positions to score as many goals as he has been for Sporting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you look at sort of the areas that he's picking up, it's sort of wing positions often. That's on both sides, but from the left in particular, he does drift out to that left flank, and that's where he likes to dribble. He's better at dribbling when it's sort of only one player in front of him, and then he kind of engages them, and then he kind of uses his feints to burst past them. But that's always sort of when he's facing the player up. At times he can receive it back to goal, but it does take him a little bit longer to kind of turn and then get into that situation. But if he can do that, he's generally quite good as well. The question is who can platform him in a way, and does it work in the Premier League? And I think there are certain teams and there are certain game situations that do allow for your players to get in those situations. I think when I think about Cunha, and he's linked to so many different teams at the moment, primarily Manchester United, his quality has been in the same sort of areas in terms of picking up slightly left-leaning, turning and facing with space to attack and being able to dribble the one or two players in front of him. But that's primarily because Wolves are a fairly low-set defensive side.
Yeah.
So if you think about directly translating Gyokeres' quality, platforming him appropriately, then you automatically look to some of the lower possession sides. I think your West Hams, your Wolves, Manchester United at times, for example. I don't know if Amorim wants to continue in that fashion. If you're thinking about some of the other teams that are a bit more high possession, which situations can you manufacture to get a player in situations where you can make use of that quality? Now, I think in build-up situations, when you entice teams onto you before going long, having somebody knock the ball down and then your second ball being won by Gyokeres, who then is facing forward, gives you the potential to manufacture situations like that. If I'm thinking Arsenal, someone like Kai Havertz being the number 9 and getting Gyokeres away from dueling, because I don't think he's a brilliant dueler in the air. I don't think he's the worst, but I don't think he's near Kai Havertz, for example.
Yeah.
And then having him receive that slightly towards the left, for example, because he can pick up those areas a bit better and carry and attack those spaces, bypassing a lot of that midfield pressure. That's perhaps a situation where you can kind of get him in. So that's where I'm thinking, but it's hard for one team to kind of mimic the dominance that Sporting have had whilst playing in that same fashion in the Premier League, in my opinion.
Well, when Havertz first joined Arsenal, we actually seen that 4-4-2, and I think you put a tweet out about it, I think it was yesterday or this morning, but Havertz, even when he played as the number 8, which was just in midfield, he did go and stand on the last line quite a lot during the build-up phase, and I think this is something that, if he went to a team like Arsenal, you could very easily manufacture this and go long from David Raya into Havertz, knock down to Gyokeres, and he's facing forward to go. And I think that's a pretty decent strategy. I think probably gets you what you want out of Gyokeres in terms of facing forward, dribbling, carrying forward, being able to, attack spaces, large spaces. I want to show you a little bit about his chance creating carries map, which is basically carries or dribbles in and around the box where he's directly, giving the players who's had a shot, and he's only doing it in these two spaces in the box here, which are just down the sides of the box. You mentioned something before about where his best zone might be around the box.
Yep.
Could you further emphasise where that might be and who do you think Arsenal could get that out of him? Because I think if you're playing split strikers like here and he's playing as the right striker, let's say, which is Havertz plays mostly down the left. So on the right, we've got Gyokeres. He probably gets into the space quite well.
Yeah.
Where he's taken a lot of
Should we set the board up? For example, if this was a defending team and then we bring the red team over as Arsenal, we can illustrate that a little bit better. So let's say we've got Gyokeres here and Kai Havertz here. You've got Bukayo Saka here and whoever the left-sided player might be there. And we'll just put some deep reset players here and here. So, yeah. As I was mentioning to you before we actually started filming, I think Gyokeres' best zones for getting goals are certainly to sort of this inside right area. I do think this is best done when he is running on to chances in this area rather than against sort of deep set defences. So again, that question mark appears. If perhaps this defence wasn't so deep and you have a player who can play these incisive passes, I know Zubimendi plays on this side and he has some of that quality. But if Declan Rice, for example, or you're in Timber perhaps,
inverted inside,
inverted and played some of these more vertical passes directly in sort of these more transitional situations, Gyokeres has the ability to run here, and he gets a shot off from wide areas very frequently and quite impressively as well. Even if he doesn't score, it forces a corner or it forces sort of parries into these dangerous areas where perhaps another player can score from. But I think from these wide areas, he doesn't have to think too much. He doesn't have to take many touches. The ball's already in front of him and he can just get a shot across. He often aims for this far post and he scores fairly well. And that's kind of his signature finish and his signature zone, I think. Against set defences, he's got sort of this deft manipulation. He's very nice in terms of like moving the ball and shifting it and getting shots off without much backlift. But with how many bodies Arsenal do face, I don't know if he'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
So there's that question mark there. Aerially, he's decent from sort of situations closer to the box, 6-yard box perhaps, but any sort
He's
of
not
more...
much of a target man, is he? Like, just put something in the air for him. He's not so much of that player, is he?
I was actually saying to you, he almost feels like he disregards his frame and his size, and he almost plays as if somebody of Sergio Aguero's stature and frame would play. He gets the ball in these areas and he sort of feints and dribbles across the goal, gets his shots off early as well. So against deep set defences, although he can get his shots off quickly in these areas, my worry is how do they get the ball to him in these areas? And
in his feet as well, in these compact low blocks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and will he have the tendency to perhaps overplay? Whether or not he moves out into sort of these areas in front of the defence and tries to force the issue perhaps is a solution that you could have. But generally, I think it's about attacking this inside right zone in semi-transitional situations is where you'll probably get the best out of him.
If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications. I wanted to touch on something that we mentioned when we were talking about another centre forward, which is the time it takes for a player to convert his touches in the box to genuine shooting opportunities. And I've watched a lot of Victor Gyokeres' goals, and the majority seems to come when there's not that many players around him. It sounds really strange because Sporting are, a team that box in these teams, pen them in, they're deep and they're defending for their lives. It doesn't really seem, he scores a lot in deep blocks, don't get me wrong. It doesn't really seem the blocks are as cemented and as numerically superior than, a Premier League block. I'm thinking, during you sign the centre forward, I'm just thinking in my mind, how is he going to fare against that Everton 4-4-2 or that West Ham or... Do you know what I mean? When they go away,
it's almost situations like this.
Yeah, and I'm just
1v1
thinking,
kind of,
I'm just thinking if I'm trying to take his qualities into account, which are facing forward, attacking, like large distances. We've seen him in the Champions League against City. Again, most of his best moments in that game, massive distances, large sprints with the ball. I just think he works for a team that's in between them. Yeah, you call it the in-between phase, which is not set possession. It's not in the final third against a low block. It's not here versus a press. It's the in-between bit where he can run, he can let loose a little bit, be a bit more free, not static in the box. Let him kind of make mistakes, get a feel for the ball. And I don't know how many teams in the top bracket, allow him to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I think if he is signed for one of these top teams, he's a great tool to have, but I don't think I can put my hat on him as being the number 9 who scores every week. I think if he is a player in games against really set defences, he might be waiting for opportunities in and around the box whilst perhaps your midfielders are the ones scoring in those games. And then in games where the situation favours him a little bit more, he perhaps scores in those games. And you might get a sort of a goal every 2 game kind of striker, which is nothing to criticise, but
is that not what Havertz is?
Yeah, but
do you know what I mean?
I do understand your point. I do think Havertz less clinical and less decisive in his finishing, but perhaps a bigger box presence, particularly aerially. So my point is, does it move the needle enough? I don't know, but Arsenal again lack transitional quality,
and he will add
and
that.
He does provide that. So whether or not you think for 50 million, 55 million, it does give you wins in 3, 4, 5 extra games.
You mentioned the other week to me about you like strikers who know when to not get involved in the game too much.
Yeah,
I don't think Victor Gyokeres is that player. I think Victor Gyokeres has to be involved in moments, and I think he'll be one of them players who, if he's struggling, he'll want the ball to feet at all times and he'll want to try stuff off the cuff. And
his crossing is like a very notable
It's all
stat,
right. Like he's got attributes outside the box. I think when you look at him and you look at how many goals he's scoring, you think he's like a pure penalty box. It's a weird comparison. It's only because he played for Sporting, but Bas Dost. Just someone who stands in there as like a lamppost. But he's not. He's very, as you mentioned, he's very like Aguero-like in terms of how many touches he wants of the ball, sometimes how many touches he's taking outside the box
Wide.
in these spaces here.
Yeah.
He's not just a goal mouth striker, which is really weird to me when I was studying him and I was like, weren't really expecting this. And I think you made like a West Ham point, like a Forest point, like I think them teams you play in between.
That would be a direct transferable.
But I just don't know if you can score 39 league goals. And
I don't think he would score.
He is playing at the quality of he deserves a move to a Big Six team or Champions League team. Like he's playing in the Champions League, do you know what I mean? And just a final one. Who's his best? Who do you think would be his best team if he is to move? And I don't know, out of like 10, rate him in terms of how positive you think he'd be in translating that skill set.
Yeah, well, I think.
I already know what number you're going to say, by the way. Like 7. Just
down the middle. Everyone says 7 for everything.
Yeah.
I think he's not going to massively change who he is as a player.
No.
And we've seen at his best he can score 40 league goals. So the question and the onus isn't on him. Wherever he goes, if he succeeds or if he fails, I think it's down to the coaches and the team that's built around him as a player. So I would not be fairly critical of him in general. I think he has the ability to scale in terms of his physicality and his mentality, given how he's approached his career, well, at Sporting, but also at Coventry.
A lot of setbacks in it.
A lot of setbacks,
coming
also,
back from stuff.
Yeah, and in the Championship as well, I think that translates to a Premier League team really well. A bit of a left of field shout because he's not necessarily been linked with them, and I don't think Chelsea will still play in that fashion.
Ooh, Chelsea.
But in my head, I think if he was playing for that sort of Pochettino, slightly more transitional based Chelsea side.
We've seen Maresca do it a little bit more in recent weeks against Liverpool.
But I don't think that's intentional. I think that's almost
You don't think that's going to continue?
Yeah, I think that's the 60, 70 minutes play the way that you've set out to play, and then you're not really winning, so kind of...
What can we do?
Yeah, or if it's against really top opposition, kind of give them a bit of onus to kind of play a bit more freely in transition. But in my head, that Nico Jackson role, for example, with Palmer would have been brilliant for him.
Yeah, a lot of touches.
Attacking these big spaces, Palmer towards the right, Gyokeres towards the left. That would have probably been ideal. I don't think many top teams play in that sort of fashion. I'd probably lean towards Manchester United if they can get him facing forward in big spaces, and then have perhaps a Cunha rotating with him down the middle. I think that probably does make sense. But for teams who dominate the box, I still think he could be a threat, but I won't expect the same numbers at all compared to what he's given. I think he still can get a shot away quickly, particularly on the right side, particularly when it falls to his feet. But a lot of his best qualities will probably be slightly minimised unless the game situation allowed him to attack those big spaces.
So I'm just thinking about Arsenal's director of football, and Arsenal are the club who have been most directly linked to him, obviously Manchester United as well. I'm thinking of Berta sat there with Gyokeres and his agent, and they're going, right, this is what we want you to do. I can't imagine they're telling him, you don't need to change anything. Carry on doing what you're doing. I do think
Arteta can maximise his profile or tweak it slightly.
He was very, very good at it. But I think he's a player, like we mentioned before, that wants a lot of touches, a lot of involvement, a lot of dribbles, a lot of chances around the box, forces the issue a lot in terms of shots. Plucks the ball, likes to play with it at his feet. But he's not, as you mentioned before, he's not like unbelievable at them attributes, but he still wants to do it a lot. And I just wonder if Arteta or Alberto will sit there and go like, no, we need you to just be a lamppost now.
But I think you've kind of got Kai Havertz to do that.
Yeah.
So I think if you've got Kai Havertz, for example, here, and a Gyokeres just off him, there is potential there. I'm not
wrong. I think we're both in this camp. He will score goals.
Yeah.
He will score goals. I'm not sure how many, which is obviously the massive question mark over him, which makes him such a interesting case study.
But do you think...
I think you've kind of convinced me with the United stuff.
Yeah. Bear in mind, if I'm United, I'm not giving my 60 million on him.
Right, okay. But in terms of the way the team plays and the way he plays and the best combination, because I'm looking at, we can't build up anyway. Right, so we're going long.
But then Cunha, if it is Cunha and Gyokeres, both of them are like scrappy in that hold-up, but none of them can make it stick time and time again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kai Havertz can make it stick, which is why that leans me slightly towards Gyokeres at Arsenal. But United get more big space opportunities to attack.
That's what
so
I
do you
think.
get what I'm saying?
I think Gyokeres would get more big space, and I think we play more direct than Arsenal in more games.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
He's an upgrade, and he's hold up to Højlund anyway.
No, but yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think he's a good player. I think he's a very interesting player.
I want him to come.
And I think there's like a massive misconception about what he's good at.
Yeah.
And I don't think he plays how a lot of people think he plays.
Yeah.
I think he's very much, he wants to be a complete number 9, but I'm not sure if he's got the quality to do that. And I think if he is to make the jump to Arsenal, I think they will try and convert him to a pure goal scorer.
Yeah.
Or anyone who holds the ball in the opposition's half for 90% of the game, they will try and convert him. Like I'm thinking of like the way Haaland was converted from this, you know. I know he adapted a little bit, Pep, but like in terms of a big space player going to, no, you're 6'5", stand in the box.
But even then, we did try and have situations where he would almost these sort of forced, not transitions, but sort of more vertical opportunities.
But I don't think he's good enough for a team to mould the style around him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, how do you get that opportunity? I think maybe if you get Saka a little bit inside and, you know, don't pin too deep.
Let him run out.
Yeah, I'm just thinking against mid blocks perhaps.
Yeah.
Arsenal have struggled.
We've done it with Havertz, I guess.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's an interesting one. I would be amiss in saying I had all of the answers to this one.
No, I'm not the same. I'm the same. I'm like, I think he's a really interesting player, but I just don't know where he works his best football in the Premier League. I just can't find a team that does all of that stuff that he wants to do.
I don't think any team do all of those things, but which team can extract the best bits of him?
But I think the ball striking, power, speed, I think is enough to get 15, 20 goals in the Prem.
Yeah,
I think that's
profile properly.
Yeah, profile properly. So there's an interesting one, yeah. Right, thank you very much for watching this episode of the Overlap Breakdown. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel. And let us know what you think about Victor Gyokeres. And we'll be back next week for some more analysis.